So this is a video about the different stages of the clay process. The reason why I want you to watch this is because I want you to understand what the different parts of the process are, so that as you're making your clay project, you know this information, and it will help you make a more successful project on your own without needing my help along the way. So the first thing we need to talk about is slip. So slip is this kind of like goopy, slippery, sticky kind of clay, and it's made by just mixing clay with water, and you can use it to attach things. So if you have two pieces of clay and you want to put them together, you can't just stick them together, because when you do that, after it goes in the oven kiln, it will separate again. So in order for things to stick permanently, you have to use slip. Slip kind of looks like this. It's kind of goopy and smushy like that. And that is slip, and you use it to attach pieces. The next thing is plastic. So plastic clay is moldable and bendy and squishy and smushy and cold, and you can roll it in your hands. And this right here is plastic clay. So you can see how it's not slippery like slip, but it is squishy. And that is the clay that you will use to build your project with. After it's sat out in the air a little while and dried out, it becomes leather hard. So leather hard clay is cold because it still has moisture in it, and it's harder. And it's easier to use if you need to construct something like a box with straight edges, or carve a design out. So this is leather hard clay right here. So you can see how it's kind of holding its shape, but you can still kind of push into it and scrape into it a little bit. So that is leather hard clay. The next stage is bone dry. So bone dry clay is dry and dusty and not cold anymore when you touch it, and it's very fragile. So this right here is bone dry clay. This is how clay needs to get before I can put it in the oven. So after your project is finished, you'll put it on the shelf so that it can dry out. And once it's dry, I will put it in the kiln. So bone dry clay, we don't want to touch it because it's really fragile. See how it's so easy to break into pieces? And so if you touch it or aren't gentle with it, it will fall apart. So when things look this color, we don't want to touch them so that they stay nice. So after things are bone dry, then I can put it into the kiln to get fired. This right here is a kiln, K-I-L-N, and it's basically an oven that is created just for clay, because in order to become permanent stone texture, the clay needs to reach a temperature that is up to 2,000 degrees. So they built this special oven that will get that hot. So once it's bone dry, I can put it in the kiln to be fired, and I will stack it all the way up to the top with shelves. And it takes about 8 hours for the oven to complete your artwork. And then it's got to cool down so that I can touch it without burning myself. And that takes about 4 hours to do. So once it goes in the kiln, it takes a while. But after it comes out, it is what we call bisqueware, which is hard like stone. So you can hear that texture. It's nice and hard, and it won't break easily like the bone dry clay. And this is a permanent project that you can keep. At this point, you could finish your project like this if you want to keep it this color, or you can choose to add some kind of decoration to it. So that comes to the next step, which is glazeware. So glaze is a special kind of glass that you add, liquid glass that you add to the outside by painting it on. And you paint it on like this. And so this is a project that has been glazed. It's in the process of drying. After it's done, I will put it back in the kiln with the glaze on it, and I will fire it again in the oven, and it will come out looking glossy and shiny like glass. And it will be safe for you to use with food, or a little more permanent and durable for you to display. Another option, if you don't want to wait for it to go back in the kiln and come back out, is you can just paint it with tempera paint, and it will look like this. And after it's dry, it will have kind of a matte texture. And another thing we can do is add this acrylic gloss paint to the outside of the tempera, and it will make it a little bit glossy, kind of like this. And that will make your project a little more permanent with the color. Here's another example of glossy tempera paint. So those are your options. Once you understand this process, it will help you in creating your project successfully.